Good afternoon. I'm going to spend a little bit of time going over how to use Best Bike Split to do your own field aero test. Hopefully you watched my last video on Golden Cheetah on how to do a similar thing in that application. In Best Bike Split, the first thing we need to do is create a bike if you haven't already. I have a bike in here. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but just give you an overview. You give it the name, type of bike, type of components, bike weight, etc. You need to fill in, I think it's a good idea to fill in the rolling resistance of the tire. When you choose tires here, it'll give you a default value, but if you use bike tire rolling resistance, you might be able to get a little bit more accurate value based on your air pressure. You fill that in, and when you're all done, one last thing, mechanical loss. Usually I let that default, or I may pick 2.2, 2.8%, depending on the type of drivetrain I have. I put 0 in this particular case, and the reason I did that is I have a power tap hub-based power meter on this, so where I was reading it was actually after the drivetrain loss, so I selected 0 in this particular case. Once you have your bike done, the next thing to do is just use the Race Analytics tab. We want to choose that bike that we just set up. We want to describe the road conditions, and it was average in this particular case. Of course, terrain, mixed populated express was like what I was at. And elevation correction, I do like to correct for elevation. Sometimes if air pressure changes, your Garmin will show elevation changes that weren't really there. This corrects for that. We do want to leave historical weather on, because at that point it will pull the temperature, humidity, air pressure data from local weather sites, so you'll have correct information for that. We'll drag and drop our file in there. We'll hit Analyze Ride, and this will take a little bit of processing, and once it's done, it'll pop up with our results. Just a little background while that's happening. This is the same file that I analyzed using Golden Cheetah, and if you recall from that, we tested 3 scenarios, and you can see that it's popped up on the screen now. The first one was using the hoods, the second one was using aero bars, and the third one was utilizing the drops. And you can see there was a pretty big gap in my tests here, and I was actually testing someone else with some gear at the same time, so I was just kind of doing this as a fun ride in the interim. And we'll get back to why that's important later. You will see that there isn't a lot of climb data in here, so it's giving me a little bit of an error because I had a flat course, and that was really by design. So to do the analysis is really quite simple. We just highlight the region we were on. Again, this first region that I was looking at was on the hoods. Once you have it highlighted, it'll pop over here, and it'll tell you my estimated CDA was 0.5104. Reset the zoom. Second one was aero bars, and we'll highlight that. And again, you can see that in this particular case it says on aero bars I had a 0.4106. Reset zoom. And lastly, I'm going to highlight the drops. It's going to tell me it was 0.464. And I'll go ahead and put up on the screen here the comparison of what Golden Cheetah had and what Best Bike Split had. And you can see that on the hoods, Golden Cheetah had 0.5002, Best Bike Split 0.5104, aero bars 0.38 versus 0.4106, and on the drops 0.4533 versus 0.464. Now, when I do these, I try not to get too hung up about the absolute number. In other words, was it 0.5002 or 0.5104? Not sure that matters a lot, because really what I'm looking at these for is a comparison. What is the hoods versus the aero bars? What is the hoods versus the drops? And you can see that in the general scheme of things, the hoods are reasonably close, the drops are reasonably close, the aero bars have some variance. So to help explain why we may see that difference between Golden Cheetah and Best Bike Split, and why I think best bike split's probably a little more accurate for some of this stuff is that if you click the weather tab, you can see that based on the historic weather, that a few things happen. One is the wind speed change during the test, and again, that's partly I'm to blame because typically if you're going to do this right, you do them kind of back to back to minimize these kind of things, not have big gaps in there. But the second thing is that the air pressure also changed, as well as the relative humidity change. All of these things can impact aerodynamics. And so the nice thing about best bike split is because it has this historic weather data, it actually corrects for those things, and Golden Cheetah does not. So in the Golden Cheetah ride, when I did this, we assumed the same row air density for the entire set, which clearly you look at here didn't exactly happen. Again, it does impact the results a little bit. You see it from the hoods to the drops. It was about a 9.4 or 9.1. I think that's pretty darn close in both cases. But going from the hoods to the aero bars, you can see one was the Golden Cheetah side was about 24% improvement, whereas on the best bike split it was only about a 20% improvement. Still, again, I think the point you can take from this is pretty big impact by changing position, and I do think that the other little nuance here is that having the weather data like you have here in best bike split probably gives you a little bit more accurate results for it. But again, very easy to use. You can go, there's all kinds of information in here that you can look at. You can look at your yaw angles, gradients, CDA clusters, and this gives you an idea of the data that it was using. Again, just quite a bit of information here, quite easy to use. You can, as you scroll along here, you can even see in the upper right the wind changing on the rider to get an idea of where the wind was hitting me as I was doing this ride. So a little bit more definitive, say, than what we see in Golden Cheetah. Both are good tools, and both can be used to help do these field tests. But in general, I would probably lean toward the best bike split solution if you do have varying conditions. In steady state conditions, I find really consistent data between the two of them. When things change, I guess I lean a little bit more toward best bike split. Hopefully this video provides a brief overview on how to use best bike split to do your aero analysis. Thank you.